saying this. Look at this. This is an article in the Toronto Star a few days ago. Under the right conditions, Canada open to sending non-combat troops to Ukraine, Defence Minister Bill Blair says. What's a non-combat troop, by the way? Here's the story. I'll just read the first line. Canada is open to sending a limited number of military personnel to train Ukrainian troops within Ukraine, so long as such an operation took place far from the front lines of the war with Russia in a clear non-combat role. Defence Minister Bill Blair says, in an interview with The Star, Blair said the idea was discussed earlier this week in Paris, where he attended a security summit alongside Canada's NATO allies and fellow supporters of Ukraine. Now, Trudeau has sent billions of dollars of our tax money. He's promised billions of dollars worth of weapons, but it's doubtful many of them have actually been delivered. We can't even really get to NATO training exercises anymore, let alone a real war zone. So be very skeptical of Trudeau. Emmanuel Macron, the French president, they still do have a real army. He floated this idea of sending troops into Ukraine itself, floated the idea a week or so ago, and the U.S. immediately threw cold water on it. I mean, are you crazy?
Well, just to be clear, we have no plans to send U.S. service members to fight in Ukraine. The president has been pretty clear on that, and that continues to be our position.
But look, Bill Blair is not a nobody. He's a senior Trudeau minister, speaking to the most trusted senior Liberal newspaper, the Toronto Star. And if he's talking about it in public, he wants to see how the idea is being received. He's testing it for a possible announcement, wouldn't you say? There's no way he would say such a thing just randomly. Now, it's one thing to send equipment, but actually sending Canadian troops into Ukraine proper. If we want to train Ukrainian troops, that can be done in Canada or in Poland or in the Baltics even. But to train them in a country where there is a hot war with Russia, where hundreds of people are being killed every day, why? Just for another press release for Justin Trudeau? What would Russia do if it saw Canadian troops in Ukraine when it was attacking an area? What do you think Russia would do? What do you think Putin's generals would do? Do you think they would stop shooting and say, whoa, don't shoot the Canadians? Or do you think they would continue on? Do you think they would shoot to kill? If our soldiers in uniforms were halfway around the world in a war zone, what do you think Putin would do? Do you think he would show mercy? Well, we can guess. Here's what Putin actually said to his parliament, the Duma, the other day when this subject of Europeans and I guess Canada putting troops in Ukraine and using weapons in ways that expand the war, when this came up. Take a listen.
Заговорили о возможности отправки на Украину натовских военных контингентов. Но мы помним судьбу тех, кто направлял когда-то свои контингенты на территорию нашей страны. Но теперь последствия для возможных интервентов будут гораздо более трагичными. Они тоже есть оружие, да знают об этом, сейчас только я сказал, тоже есть оружие, которое может поражать цели на их территории. И что все они придумывают сейчас, чем пугают весь мир, что все это реально грозит конфликтом с использованием ядерного оружия, а значит уничтожением цивилизации. Они чего, этого не понимают, что ли?
Now, Ukraine is not part of NATO, which is a key fact because NATO is a treaty, a contract really, amongst different countries. And the key article of that treaty is Article 5, which says an attack on one NATO member is legally an attack on all of them, and they all must rally to the aid of each other. So that doesn't apply to Ukraine. It's not in NATO. But what happens if French troops or Canadian troops in Ukraine are attacked, either on purpose or by accident or not knowingly by Russia, given that Russia is in a war there? And not to be too conspiratorial, but wouldn't Ukraine want that to happen in a kind of way to commit Western militaries to do the job that Ukraine's military is having an increasingly difficult time doing? Really doesn't make sense to add lots of little small countries to NATO from the point of view of strengthening the alliance. I mean, Luxembourg is an early member of NATO, but it's not really going to save the US or Canada or the UK in any war. Same could be said about the little countries, Finland and Sweden, historically they'd be neutral. They're not really allies in the sense that they're not bringing a lot of firepower to bear. They're more acting like tripwires, encircling Russia, a way to bring the rest of NATO countries into a war in a manner that was not done for Ukraine. But Ukraine is not in NATO. Putting Canadian or French troops into Ukraine to risk being attacked risks activating the NATO alliance against Russia. That is World War III, and that is nuts. Let me show you something even more insane. And I found this on TikTok, which is where I find all of my alternative news about Russia and China. I think I sample a lot of news from the right and the left, for and against every issue. But strangely enough, it's on the Chinese-owned app, TikTok, that I get my anti-American propaganda. It's all over TikTok. Just think about what it's teaching young kids. I never trust anything I see on TikTok, but I use it like I use the website Wikipedia. It's a starting point to do my own research. And I heard about this crazy story on TikTok, and I hadn't heard it anywhere else. And of course, I don't believe it until I check it. And wouldn't you know it, my God, it's true. A group of high-ranking German Air Force generals had a lengthy meeting, and they were talking about using long-range German cruise missiles called Taurus missiles to attack the strategic Russian bridge, the Kerch Bridge that Russia built to link Crimea to Russia. This was after its 2014 invasion of Ukraine. It's the longest bridge in Russia. It's the most strategically important bridge. It's a national symbol. It's a bridge that Putin personally inaugurated. It's been attacked at least 3 times already during the war. Ukraine has claimed responsibility. The bridge is still operational. It's being repaired. And so Germany's Air Force generals had a long meeting to talk about sending 10 or 20 Taurus cruise missiles at the bridge to blow it up. Germany was talking about doing that and how to do that and when to do that and what way to do that. Germany, which is not in a war with Russia, I thought. And if Russia hits back, what happens then? Is NATO Article 5 activated? If Germany, which is not at war at Russia, launches a bunch of missiles at Russia and Russia responds, does that pull the rest of us into a war? That is nuts. That is crazy. That is Armageddon stuff. But let me play for you some clips from German TV's English language broadcasts. I don't know if you know, just like the BBC has foreign language, they have Persian language and French language. German TV has an English station outlet, English language outlet. They just heard, 38 minutes of recordings of Germans talking about attacking Russia, something that really hadn't been heard since the Wehrmacht invaded the Soviet Union 80 plus years ago. And their number one concern was not, will this start World War III, but who leaked it? Take a listen to this interview.
DW's Brussels Bureau Chief Alexandra von Namen is with the German Chancellor in Rome. I asked her whether Olaf Scholz has given any more details about the leak.
No, Olaf Scholz kept his cool here in Rome. We just got this one statement on the matter, a statement in which the German Chancellor stressed that this is a serious matter that is being investigated, but then he went on with his program here in Rome. But of course we know that he also knows that he is facing uncomfortable questions at home, especially when it turns that it's true that this conversation among high-ranking German officers was conducted not on a secret internal army network, but on the WebEx platform, despite repeated warnings by Germany's intelligence services that Russia uses espionage and sabotage as part of its hybrid war. And we are already hearing from lawmakers in Germany, from lawmakers in the opposition, but also from members of the coalition that the German Chancellor is leading, who are demanding consequences, saying saying that the incident has to be investigated, but that Germany also needs to increase its security and counterintelligence.
So just how concerned are NATO countries about the extent of Russia's espionage activities? I mean, could this incident have been merely the tip of the iceberg?
This is the big question. How much further does this go? And we'll have to wait and see, because frankly as well, what we understand from some of the information Der Spiegel, the German paper, reported that actually this conversation between these senior German Air Force officials was recorded over an unsecure link via WebEx. It wasn't a high secured intelligence link, according to their reporting. And that is very concerning that such sensitive intelligence is being shared over there. And then that raises the question, how much more might have been recorded? What else can be said? Also in the recording, there was some discussion that perhaps the British could be involved in such a project around the Taurus missiles. The Brits are yet to comment as well. I think what we'll see is sort of real sense of intelligence damage limitation. The other countries do not want to be dragged into this. They want to keep it related and keep it focused on Germany, where the leak came from.
I mean, I guess it is mildly interesting how this was wiretapped. It sounds like these German generals just used an unsecured version of Zoom called WebEx for their chat, but that's not the main story here. I mean, it's an interesting detail, I guess. But the story is Germany was talking about attacking Russia, a nuclear-armed adversary that is in the middle of a hot war.